You, the guys who pulled the short straw for this time of the afternoon. I do apologize. I don't know why I had to have a CV because half my former colleagues are sitting in front of me. Just a small disclaimer, former colleague who's also here once said that this symposium was for scientists. So I just want to say that I'm no scientist and that whatever I'm doing today is basically my personal experiences and stuff. So please don't shoot the messenger. And then I think it was a Jacques who was before me. He basically did half my presentation just after load shedding, which was the impact of it. And obviously that meant that he did half my presentation. So I can honestly tell you, we can still get happy hour down the road by the time I'm finished. And thanks for Koos and the NEOP. All right, so the other big problem is half my colleagues that have worked here has known me on a social basis. So they're expecting something weird to happen, but I can honestly say that I'll keep my shirt on this time. So, all right. So let's get moving along because I have to kill time because this presentation is so short and, soos hulle sê in Afrikaans, voor die hand liggend. But in any case, let's start with a short history. Electricity arrived in South Africa on 25 April 1860. And I think it was in Simonstown, and it was because a tram line was installed. Then in 1882, the first street lights in Africa were switched on in Kimberley. And at that time, London, the city in the UK, only had gas lights. So we were really far ahead of our time at one stage. And then unfortunately in 1923, the government decided, I think, that Eskom was formed. And then we really lost the plot in 2007. When load shedding started. And I see Eskom quotes it as the latter part of 2007. So yeah, and as they say, the rest is history. What I'll be trying to do is to sort of explain the impact of it, like focusing on the cold chain, which Jacques has sort of run through already in any case, but I'll just work off his slides quickly. Then from a packhouse production side, and then costs and capex, which we'll have to see what that impact was. So, the first thing is time duration from delivery to on temperature, and this is basically for orchard-run fruit. As we all know, it's quite important to get the fruit break the field heat, get it back onto temperature, and this is often very difficult if you don't have the capacity to run generators or have cooling. Post-harvest treatments like drenching or smart fresh treatments all are quite dependent on good electricity and in some cases how cold the fruit is. We've noticed that orchard-run fruit quality often, you can't understand why your quality of your fruit is all of a sudden, this is not a good year. It's not a good year, it's load shedding, because if your ability is not to keep the door closed of the cold room and wait the 2 or 4 hours out, you still have fluctuations in temperature. And I think ultimately all these aspects have an impact on fruit quality. And the same can go for shelf life. So we've often noticed that stuff arrives and we don't understand because on our shelf life at the packhouse, it's generator operated. So, but it doesn't have the break in temperature that often happens in the cold rooms. And this is sort of to go on to the second last block there is not all packhouses can run generators or have solar and stuff like that. So we often, in the packhouse I currently work, we have to decide what is more important. Is it the orchard-run fruit, or is my 4 containers loading tomorrow for my fruit in cold storage more important to have it on temperature? So you have to prioritize between, is it bin cooling or is it pallet cooling? And I think these things all ultimately have a effect. And then pallet residency is longer. If, for instance, you can't run your cooling fans at full tilt, then this has an adverse effect on your time, and don't even bring in then the poor performance of our harbors at the moment. Then in production, as mentioned before, packing material is an issue. It has been affected, and it starts with the suppliers. If you're lucky, they have backup power. Some of their factories in Epping, for instance, has no load shedding because they work on a reduced load. But if you move into other areas, then it's all generator. And that's basically only your corrugators that we're talking about. But plastic bags, pulp trays, everything electricity. So packing material or load shedding has had a big impact. Lead times on anything from over the world is load shedding has an effect on it. So spare parts, small businesses in your local area. Most pack houses is not in the middle of Cape Town. They're in places like where I come from at the moment, Robertson or Ceres. And small enterprises don't have the ability often to run backup power, so this has an effect. Storage space. So the only way to combat packing material is to order more and to deliver more on site at one time, and then storage space becomes a problem. The actual production time on packing lines, what I mean with that is that like now, the switch over we had took about, which seemed like an eternity, but it was like 30 seconds. But in a pack house, if you don't have automatic changeovers, your line is stopping. If you've got and I don't want to name drop it, if you've got a MAF sizer, then it takes you about 15 minutes to start it up again. And this is time lost on the line. So that means you're losing capacity. Not all of us are in the Apple industry, and some of the product we work is kind of time sensitive. So when you lose capacity, then you then you under the cosh, and that costs money. People management, we don't often get the effect that it has on your staff. And you go home, or most of us go home, we might have an inverter, solar power, or an ability to have some form of backup. Most of our staff goes home to areas where there's not even proper electricity on a good day. So staff morale, if you work night shifts, if you have to go drop off people at 4 o'clock in the morning and it's dark, security is a big issue for these people. So often it leads to absenteeism or just basic staff morale. I'm quite a morning person, but if I don't have a cup of coffee during load shedding, then I'm quite grumpy when I get to the office. And I think this has the same effect if you have 400 people working for you and nobody could have a cup of coffee. So the people management of site, I think, has been affected as well. Then connectivity. Again, where we situated, even with Eskom on, the cell phone signal is poor. So that same guy who has no power goes and takes the tower's battery because now he has backup power. And then that has an effect on your pack house because a lot of the things we do these days are people have to log in, monitor. So connectivity has also been impacted by load shedding. Then equipment and costs. So if you never knew which, equipment in your pack house was power sensitive, then just wait for stage 8 or 6. That's usually when you notice how things just doesn't come back to life, and then it usually means a lot of downtime. So what we've noticed is the sensitivity of some electrical equipment, power surges. So when power comes back on or just before it drops off, this all has effect on appliances, sure. This is not a household talk, sorry. It's in a pack house, so machinery. Insurance, if you're not at OUTsurance, I suppose you have got a letter recently stating that you need surge protection. And these things all come at a cost. So we have seen quite an increase in our insurance charges and the way people are dealing with it. So thank you to all those guys that's got the 90-inch flat screen TVs that they've illegally got from the insurances. You've now spoiled it for the rest of us. Then new projects. Only talking basically from where I come from. If you had an idea of expanding or renewing at the moment, you'd rather consider getting a generator or solar panels or battery backup than putting in a new packing line. So I think load shedding has impacted us in restricting us going forward and renewing and sort of building on that. So I see a few guys are shaking their heads. Maybe that's the 2 a day or Kromko guys. Maybe they're making a lot of money, but definitely not where I'm coming from. Then load shedding schedules. I'm quite surprised the power went off after I wrote this presentation. We haven't had an outage in Robertson for the rest of the week. So again, it's not really, it's not reliable. In our case, where I come from, we have a seamless changeover. When we go onto generator, we've got people on standby doing this. So if the power doesn't go off at 4 o'clock, we still have to run our generator for at least half an hour to make sure if Eskom has made up its mind. That comes at a cost. If that's 4 times a day and it doesn't happen, then there is a fair bit of diesel that's going down the drain. Then supplier costs. Everybody is jumping onto the wagon saying, listen, you want shorter lead times, it's going to cost you, because we had to make sure that we can produce. So we see all over the industry that supplier costs have gone up. And then budget and capex, it hasn't affected, like I've mentioned earlier, like our new projects. So we see a lot more expenditure on sort of backup power, power efficiency type of tools or stuff that we can implement on that. Then, sure, and you guys are lucky. This was not a half an hour speech. I should have disclaimed it beforehand. So I'm coming close to the end of my presentation. So happy hour, here we go. So final thoughts. The impact of load shedding has had a massive impact on nearly every aspect of the production chain. I tried to now, in a very short span of time, to highlight a few areas, but it has literally targeted us everywhere. Most institutions have made a good effort to mitigate the impact of load shedding. And what I said there in brackets is energy saving ideas. I think the one positive we can take from load shedding is that we've all started thinking energy efficiency. We've seen a lot of development on batteries, sort of, technology improving. So I think the one good thing that's coming out of this is there's a lot of advancement in technology and the way we think in the packhouse. So for instance, you're getting specialists now in to see how you can run the same line but at 50 kVA less or 20 or whatever, because every single kVA you can spare is either less diesel, less generator capacity or something like that. So I think that is one good thing that has come out of this. And then, and like I said in my final statement, is however, and unfortunate, most of these costs have come at the expense of the producer, which has already had to face its own challenges. So I think that I could have actually just, if somebody asked you what was the impact, is that, and it doesn't matter if you're palm or citrus or stone, is that ultimately the farmer or the producer is getting the brunt of a lot of these add-ons, because ultimately somebody has to pay for it, and that is not a very good thing. So yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.